Welcome to Module 5.5 of your GED Social Studies preparation. Today we're focusing on one of the most important skills you'll need for test success: analyzing visual materials like charts, graphs, and political cartoons. These types of questions make up about 40% of what you'll see on the actual GED test, so mastering this skill is crucial for passing. By the end of this lesson, you'll have a systematic approach to tackle any visual analysis question with confidence. Let's start with the basics. Every chart or graph has essential key components you must identify first: title and labels. Always begin by reading the title, as this tells you exactly what data you're looking at. Scale and time frame. Examine the labels on both axes, check the scale, and note the time frame being covered. Source information. This tells you who collected the data and helps you assess its reliability. Units of measurement. Pay attention to whether we're talking about thousands, millions, or percentages. You'll encounter 4 common GED chart types. Bar charts. These compare quantities across different categories, so look for the highest and lowest bars. Line graphs. These show change over time, so focus on whether the trend is going up, down, or staying steady. Pie charts. These display parts of a whole that always total 100%, so identify the largest and smallest segments. Tables. These organize data in rows and columns, so practice finding specific information quickly. Now let's learn the STAR method, a systematic approach that works for any visual question. S. Scan the visual type and title. First, identify what type of chart you're looking at and read the title. T. Read titles and all labels. Examine all titles and labels, including axes, legends, and source information. A. Analyze patterns and trends. Look for patterns, trends, and relationships in the data. R. Relate data to the question. Connect what you've learned to the specific question being asked. The GED will test you with 4 main question types. Direct reading questions ask you to find a specific data point. For example, what was the rate in 2020? Comparison questions require you to identify which category has the highest or lowest value, such as which had the highest growth. Trend analysis questions focus on changes over time periods, like between 1990 to 2000. Calculations questions ask you to combine data points, such as what percentage combined, like adding percentages for education and healthcare spending together. Next, let's examine political cartoons, which require a different skill set. Political cartoons use common symbols to represent bigger ideas. Uncle Sam represents the U.S. government or American people. Donkey represents the Democratic Party. Elephant represents the Republican Party. Eagle represents American strength or freedom. Dove represents peace. Scale represents justice or fairness. Now let's review the visual elements that reveal meaning. Facial expressions show the cartoonist's opinion, whether characters appear angry, worried, or confident. Size and position indicate power and importance. Larger figures usually represent more influence or significance. Labels provide direct identification of people, places, or concepts. Setting gives historical context about when and where events are taking place. Moving forward, let's learn how to find the cartoonist's point of view. First, determine whether the cartoon uses positive or negative imagery. Next, connect the cartoon to historical context and events from that time period. Consider the intended audience reaction. What response did the artist want to create? Finally, decide whether the cartoon shows support or criticism of the subject. Now let's examine advanced techniques for better analysis. Spotting misleading visuals. Watch for broken scales that don't start at 0, as these can exaggerate differences between data points. Making inferences beyond the data. If unemployment rose while factories closed, there's likely a connection between these events. Cross-referencing with text passages. Check whether the visuals support or contradict the written information provided in accompanying text. Now let's discuss practical test-taking strategies. First, time management. Spend 30 seconds to scan before reading the question. This helps you understand what you're examining. Read complex questions first, Then examine the visual with that specific question in mind. Use the process of elimination. Quickly remove obviously wrong answers to narrow down your choices. Next, let's review what to avoid these mistakes during the test. Misreading scales or units. Always double-check whether numbers represent thousands, millions, or percentages. Confusing correlation with causation. Remember that just because two trends happen together doesn't mean one causes the other. Overlooking time frames. Make sure your answer matches the specific years mentioned in the question. Assuming information not shown. Only use data that's actually presented in the visual. For a quick check before answering, ask yourself these questions shown on screen. What type of chart or graph is this? What time period does it cover? What are the highest and lowest values? What trend or pattern do you notice? What's the main message being conveyed? Let's wrap up with the key takeaways from this lesson. Use the STAR method for all visuals. This systematic approach works for any chart or graph you encounter. For political cartoons, focus on symbols plus message plus context. Understanding these three elements will help you interpret any cartoon. Remember that 40% of test questions involve visual analysis, making this skill crucial for your success. Practice systematic analysis, not quick guessing. Taking time to understand leads to better results. Finally, take time to understand before answering. Those crucial seconds of analysis will improve your accuracy significantly. You've now learned systematic approaches to tackle the visual analysis questions that make up a significant portion of your GED social studies test. Remember to use the STAR method for charts and graphs, focus on symbols and context for political cartoons, and always practice methodical analysis rather than rushing to answer. With these strategies, you'll approach visual analysis questions with confidence on test day.